coming. I hope you can all hear me. My name is Elliott, I'm just about starting Kapashiki Gaishin here in Japan. And as for what I'm going to talk about, it's going to be divided into 3 sections. First, how did I get here in Japan starting a company in my life? Second, what's it like starting a company in Japan? And third, some information about what I'd like to do with the company going forward. So, the first section, how I got from this cute little kid who's got a sword tucked behind his shirt and a flashlight ready to go on adventures, to being in front of you all talking today.
That's a start.
And I had this amazing realization in my life when I was a college student that everything that I like and I'm passionate about in my life is driven by my imagination. It connects why I love theater, why I love video games, why I love role-playing games, why I love board games, why I love Japan, and why I'm doing what I'm doing today. And then the logical side of me causes me to study computer programming and business and really thoroughly research these topics that my passion is driving me towards. And it all started when I got a Nintendo back when I was 8 years old. And this changed my life. It was my first introduction to the game industry. And because I professionally work in the game industry, I like to spend this time talking about how that came to be. So through the introduction of this system, I started subscribing to Nintendo Power magazine, which was a United States publication. And lo and behold, one day in this magazine, when I was 14 years old, there was an article about a school called DigiPen Institute of Technology that was just opening up at the time in Vancouver, Canada. And I filed this away in the back of my mind, and so even though I was a high school student, studying lots of theater and still playing lots of video games, when it finally came time for me to apply to college, I remembered this article. And I said, "Mom, I want to go here." And she said, No way. This school isn't accredited. What if you graduate and you can't get a job afterwards? This could be a huge mistake. So we made a compromise that I would go to a different college first, get a real degree, and then if I still wanted to go here afterwards, then I could. And so I ended up applying to a lot of different theater schools. None that I wanted to go to had me as an acceptable applicant. So in the end, I decided to go to Emerson College. And it was Emerson's in Boston, Massachusetts. It's a private school where the largest major is film production. And here, even though my major was actually graphic design, I spent more time doing TV production just through sheer hapstance of who I met and the organizations I got involved with. So every year the school produces an awards show, like the Emmy Awards, like for TV programs. And this professional level, year-long production kind of was my boot camp, if you will. It kind of whipped me in shape from being a lackadaisical high school student to being somebody that could actually succeed in the future. So even though I didn't want to go here, I wanted to go directly to DigiPen, in retrospect, I'm very glad that I had time here. And instead of graduating in 4 years, I was taking summer classes and trying to work through as quickly as possible. And it was finally my mom saw this about a year and a half later. She's like, "Well, okay, you can apply to that other school now if you still want to." So I said, yes! Yes. And DigiPen is this really amazing place. It's in Redmond, Washington, which is where Microsoft is located. And it's actually, at this time, it had moved from Canada to Redmond. And it's on the property of Nintendo of America. So the school's owner has very close ties with Nintendo. The school is like renting real estate from them, and so you can see here just how it's kind of set up. And for me, going to this school is like a really magical experience because it's kind of like Harry Potter. You know, he wants to go to a magical school, he gets that letter of acceptance that he's so excited about, and he gets whisked off to Hogwarts, which for me was DigiPen, where you get to learn magic and how to create video games. And that just kind of blew my mind. But the truth of the matter is, it was really a lot of hard work. We didn't spend time playing games. There was a very rigorous amount of studying that we had to do to complete more or less 5 years worth of classes in 4 years. And it was here again, while I was a student, that I had that realization that everything up until now was connected to my imagination. And graduating from DigiPen was my greatest lifetime achievement to this point in time. And after I graduated, I started working, actually, while I was at DigiPen, I worked for Full Armor Studios as an intern in Seattle, Washington. And I've done both professional designing and programming for games. And Waseda was actually bought by a larger company my senior year, and I was offered a job with them, but I had to quit school first. And in retrospect, I decided that, well, in hindsight, I decided that was a bad choice, so I stayed in school and graduated, and ultimately got a job with a THQ studio down in Southern California. Where there I worked as both programmer and designer on a few different titles. Some were released, some weren't released. And it was during this time that I started studying Japanese, because this whole time I still wanted to ultimately come to Japan and work in the game industry. You see, because just like the salmon, who every year travel upriver, upstream, back to the place where they were born to lay their eggs for the next generation, I sort of viewed my journey to Japan in the same way. Because it was all these Japanese games that I played as a child, Mario, Zelda, Sonic, that I loved, that influenced me to want to join the game industry in the first place. And so here, coming to Japan, and working with a Japanese company to make games for a future generation was like me completing a full circle cycle for myself, just like the salmon do. And so I had a wonderful 4 years working for a company called Tri-Ace. They're primarily a developer of role-playing games. And at the company, I was in their R&D department. So I wasn't on a game team specifically. I was working to make tools and technology that would be utilized by other people for their games. And this was a change from what I was doing back in California. But it was all right with me because I had another realization while I was in the process of coming to Japan and applying for a job. And that realization was, what do I really care about in the game industry? And the ultimate conclusion was I care about making a quality product. And my thought about the best way that I can contribute to making a quality product over time changed while working professionally. You know, I saw the realistic implications of budgets and schedules and for tools and technology that people have. And so ultimately, by the time I joined this company, I felt like the best way that I could contribute to making a quality game is by making better tools for people to work with and iterate with, because games aren't fun overnight. You have to play around with ideas and experiment and see what works. And when you're under tight deadlines and budgets, that's really tough to do, and sometimes it gets left on the cutting room floor. So by enabling creators to work more productively, I felt like I was really making a contribution that was meaningful. And at this point in my career, I sort of had hit like a record high. Like I beat the game, so to speak. You know, I accomplished my lifelong dream of getting a job at a major Japanese game publisher, speaking at a Japanese game development conference last year, and I was sort of on sky high. But this idea of New Game Plus, which exists in video games, where you've beaten the game, and then you go and play through it one more time, but you're starting back from scratch. Like maybe some of the items you found along the way or the knowledge that you gained carries over, but your next time playing through is going to be a little bit harder, a little bit more challenging, but you can find that secret ending or something different playing through it a second time. And so for me, starting a company in Japan, it's like I'm going through my own New Game Plus right now. And along the way, as I was trying to research and learn how to actually start a company in Japan, I came across this great organization called Jetro, which has a website which has a pretty nice English overview of what you need to do to start a company, labor laws, taxation, etc. And the thing is, Jetro, so I decided I was going to go speak to Jetro in person, which sort of was like, again in my mind, everything kind of like a game. So here, I had to go to the office location, find where it actually was, go ask a security guard where the elevator was to go to, take the elevator to the right floor, then talk to somebody. And while I was talking to this person, it was a little bit like playing a role-playing game or some sort of social situation, because she explained to me that Jetro only works with companies that are already existing outside of Japan, and that if I was wanting to start a company in Japan, Jetro could not be of any assistance to me. And so that's where the conversation was going to end.
Catch-22.
Yes. But just like any good choose-your-own adventure, if I was able to say the right things, which I was, she gave me some more information. And ultimately, through this information, I was able to find some other really helpful resources, like the Tokyo Metropolitan Small and Medium Enterprise Support Center, which does offer services in English. And this place is great. You can talk with lawyers, accountants, judicial scriveners, for free. You can talk over the phone even if you can't go in person. So I highly recommend checking this out to anybody who's interested. I will say that not everybody that works there as a volunteer has...
Where are they located? In Shinjuku's Tocho? In the Tocho building?
They're located in Akihabara, very close to Akihabara Station. And not everybody here has the same level of English fluency. So I would encourage you to maybe contact them ahead of time if you're somebody that really needs to speak with somebody just in English, or you can't do a comfortable exchange of the two. And so, as I was still continuing to research in person how to start a company in Japan, I found that there really wasn't a lot of very detailed information in English. But when I started searching in Japanese, suddenly a wealth of new options opened up to me. And I found this great website called Inquip, or Inkpop, as they might pronounce it. And here they have incredibly detailed instructions about how to start your own company. And it goes beyond just instructions, because they also will talk you through the thought process about what choices to make when you're writing your articles of incorporation, when deciding upon taxation issues for Japan. So if you're creating a company for the Japanese market, having this sort of information, this is what I wanted some counselor at the previous location that I mentioned to tell me or to walk me through. But having somebody do that verbally is very laborious. So here, being able to look at it on this website, even though it's in Japanese, was still a huge help for me. And you can run it through Google Translate and get some useful information out of it as well, I think. And then I also found this other great sort of venture helping company called EasyX. And here they have a lot of sample documents and sample contracts in Japanese. But when I was going through the process of writing my articles of incorporation, I took a look at their template articles of incorporation and saw what sort of clauses they were including that the judicial scrivener that I had hired wasn't including. And so I'm just giving this guy some mention as well, because it's a good idea if you're going to start a company in Japan to look at what other people are doing both in the country as well as externally. Japan's business laws are sort of mirrored after the United States to a certain extent. So even researching things that exist in another country and then asking your advisor here in Japan, hey, can I do this too, is a good idea, and a way to get some information in English. So as far as actually talking about the costs of starting a company in Japan, this is taken from Jetro's website that I previously mentioned. And if you're able to speak Japanese, you can really save some money by going directly to people. When you search in English for help starting a company, every response you get is going to be very expensive. But if you search in Japanese, suddenly you'll see people offering to do it for next to nothing. And that's just a difference in supply and demand in the marketplace, right? We're in Japan, everybody speaks Japanese here. So ultimately, I was able to hire a judicial scrivener for about $400, and the savings of getting ink concepts, you can do this online through a number of websites, the company Initial Stamps. And then the discount of about $400 off of the cost of incorporating a company are from submitting your articles of incorporation electronically instead of on paper. There's a savings that you can get of $400 by doing so. However, you need special equipment to submit it electronically, which only the professionals have. Otherwise, you have to buy it yourself. So the $400 I saved from filing electronically was used to pay the judicial scrivener to do all the incorporation work for me. Now, starting a company in Japan, above and beyond the corporate law that exists, there's a lot of extra hoops that we have to jump through as a foreigner in order to be able to be granted a business investor status from immigration. Things that someone with permanent residency doesn't have to worry about. And you can read about what those requirements are in the link on the right. But they include having to have a physical office that's completely separate from your residence. And you can't use a shared office or a working space. It has to be your own private working area with 4 walls and a door. And you need to submit photographs of this to immigration to prove that you have it. And they might even come to visit you to check. Another requirement is that, whereas if you just live in Japan, you could use your own house that you're renting or owning as your office if you have permission from whoever does own it. So that's a great tax savings. Another requirement that immigration has is a minimum salary. Like sometimes when you're just starting a company, you say, I don't want to take a salary because that's just going to be extra income tax that I'm going to be paying. But from an immigration standpoint, you have to receive a salary from your company, otherwise you can't get the proper residential permission to stay in Japan. So then, additionally, like, in thinking about taxes, the tax structure in Japan is a little bit different than the United States in terms of encouraging entrepreneurship. In the United States, for example, when a founder of a company gets shares, they can file a form with the United States government, stock shares in the corporation, qualified small business stock, I think is what it's called. And by filing the special form 83B with the US government, when they ultimately sell those shares later on, they don't have to pay income tax on them, or they pay a very reduced income tax. Whereas I'm not aware of such a similar preferential treatment for entrepreneurs existing in Japan. There is, however, if you're an angel investor, this link on the right goes to a government website which talks about some tax advantages or tax savings for angel investors to encourage them to invest in your company. So if you ever are looking for investment in the future, you can make sure to inform your potential investors that there are tax advantages for them investing in your company, as mentioned here. So it's really ultimately a lot of extra work to start a company in Japan, which may make a lot of people think second about it. But for me, I still decided to go ahead and do it. So without further ado, I'd like to talk a little bit about 24 Explore. And what I'm looking to accomplish with this company is to encourage people to explore more of the real world, to merge more of the real world and video game-like experiences, and to educate people without them really knowing it. There's a lot of wonderful knowledge that you can learn from playing a game or engaging in some sort of social application. And I'd like to take advantage of that. So I'm really interested in augmented reality, which, for those of you that don't know, is you can use your phone or you can use some sort of wearable technology, and augmented reality shows you additional information overlaid on top of what you're already seeing. As you can see with these examples here, you may see a map for walking, for navigations. When you meet somebody, you might get some information about conversation reminders to ask them about, to compliment them on their scarf. They still owe you some money, etc. If you're going into public transportation, you'll see a notice about that sort of information. So this is what augmented reality is doing today. And this Google Glasses is a product that still has not been released to the consumer market yet, but everybody is anticipating it being released later this year. And I'm very excited about it because finally, with this technology, all these amazing ideas that have been going through my mind since I was a little kid suddenly become a reality. So when I walk around, I love finding really interesting things, be it art or sculptures or nature. And these are just a few examples of some neat street art or objects that I've found wandering around Tokyo over the years. And using augmented reality, or using an application just like a mapping application, I'd like to enable people to find these places, share them with others, and check and see who's gone where, and to then learn information about them. Like if you go to, for example, I guess this sculpture, you might then be able to read more about that. Or if you go to this park. And this brings me then to the third point about subtle education, which I was greatly inspired by this book, The Diamond Age, which I read while at Emerson College. And in short, this is a wonderful shining example of educating people without them realizing they're being educated. And so in conclusion, starting up in Japan, is it worth it? For me it is. Because Tokyo and Japan really inspires my imagination, my creativity, and that's very important to me. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. So, you can keep